Hi everybody, my name's Scott Dudley and today my special guest is Michael Zuercher, who's based in South Dakota. Michael is the CEO and co-founder of Prismatic, which is the integration platform for B2B software companies. Welcome to the show, Michael. Are you ready to rock and roll?
Thanks, Scott. Happy to be here and ready to go.
Excellent, sounds great. All right, so as usual, we might just start off with your background and what initially got you interested in starting a SaaS company.
Sure. Yeah. So I actually all the way back in 2003 started a software company, and that was, I guess, before SaaS was a common thing, and certainly before it was a term. We were a mostly premise-based software company for law enforcement, for police, mostly in North America. And I grew that company for about 16 years and eventually sold it to private equity. But along that path, we had a lot of kind of challenges around the integrations that we were required to provide for our customers. And so, I came away from that experience after selling and exiting the company. Both my CTO and I came away with the experience of having these real world challenges with how you manage hundreds and hundreds of integrations for, a B2B type SaaS or software, I guess, in that case. And so, we really started Prismatic just to scratch our own itch and to say, hey, we had this problem. We never felt like we solved it very well. Honestly, it was kind of one of the things that we never felt like we were happy with how we did it at the previous company. And so we started Prismatic, I think cathartically, maybe more than anything, but really set out to solve the challenge that we had.
Excellent. All right. So did you borrow VC money to launch Prismatic or did you bootstrap it instead? Tell us a bit about how you actually got it off the ground in the beginning.
Yeah. So we bootstrapped for quite a while. Obviously, with a kind of a second founder situation, we were able to do that pretty effectively. We did take a little bit of seed money at some point. That was a couple of years ago now, or a year and a half ago, but have largely bootstrapped with some angel money involved as well.
Okay. And how did you actually know when you got that product market fit correct, when you actually nailed it?
Yeah, we're kind of in an interesting situation that I think a lot of startups find themselves in where, not only are we kind of a new company, but our space is very new. We're in a new category. Probably in a lot of ways just is coming into popularity now. And so I think not only were we really looking for, product market fit as a company and with our own product, but to some extent, we were navigating this new category that was kind of defining itself with several players, each having a voice and certainly the market kind of speaking for, what ended up being the right answer around various things. And so product market fit has been kind of a steady progression, I think, for us. We worked with a few early customers and we're fortunate to have some really good partners in kind of a private beta type stage. As we got a little bit farther along, we started just seeing, I guess, more and more traction. And one way to kind of think of it from our perspective is that a lot of the introductory calls or discovery calls with prospects just kind of kept getting easier and easier month after month. I think we got to where we kind of understood the pain of the market probably a little bit better. I think we got better at explaining what we were doing and understanding what our customers needed. And it's interesting because it wasn't like a light switch went off, but I think just kind of gradually the conversations got easier, the traction picked up, number of leads picked up, number of conversions picked up. And I think before long, we kind of stepped back and said, whoa, this is very different than it was 6 months ago. This is, I guess, the beginnings of an inflection point.
Always a good sign. Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, looking back on that experience, is there anything that you would change about your approach if you had to do it again?
I mean, I think anybody who gets to do something a second time, knowing what they know at the end, would do it very, very differently, right? So,
yes.
I think in a lot of ways things have gone very, very well for us, and I feel very, very fortunate that we kind of are where we're at. I think certainly there are some, everything from some product things that, where we went down some path and then a few months later realized, hey, that's probably off a little bit. We need to bring back over here. Certainly we'd love to cut off some of those mini detours, I guess. I think, however, that's just a completely natural part of product development and just kind of natural, I guess. And so, although I could certainly point to specific things where I would say, oh, I wish we could cut that off. I wish we could have, shortened this. I wish this would have gone faster. I think in general, doing that just isn't how the process works. And so, net, I'm very happy with how things have gone and where we're at.
Well, I guess being that second time around, you would have learned a lot of mistakes from your first SaaS. So I guess that would have been a great experience to start your second one.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's actually kind of interesting. It's a double-edged sword from my perspective, because certainly there are some things that you didn't know the first time. And
Yeah.
the first time for me, I was 19 years old. I didn't know anything. And so I certainly, I'm in a different place just from a career perspective, as are my co-founders. However, the flip side of that is, I think you can get so stuck in the way you were thinking in your later stage company. After 16 years of my first company, we were a few hundred people and had a couple thousand customers. That's a pretty different mindset to going back to the early stage. And so
Yeah.
I think although you can take a lot from your first experience and certainly make some better decisions probably the second time, I think you have to be super careful not to make mistakes where you're trying to act like a later stage company because that's your most recent experience, when in reality, it's a little bit back to the drawing board. I mean, you're back to just a few employees, you're back to 0 customers, you're back to the early stage. And that was a pretty jarring transition in a certain way. Maybe more than I guess I would have guessed. It was interesting. It was an interesting thing to go through for sure.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah. All right. So how did you get your first 10 customers? Were they sort of friends and family, or how did that happen?
An interesting thing about being in the space that I was in the first time around is that although you would expect that there were a bunch of colleagues and things in partner companies that could end up being customers of Prismatic, because I was in such a niche vertical industry in kind of police software, that's a small world. And so we did have a few early customers that were kind of previous business relationships, but a lot of our customers kind of came the old-fashioned way, I guess. I mean, with actual demand gen marketing and
Nice.
and various things like it. And we're all found, or I shouldn't say all. Many of them were found organically. Of course, some of them were relationships, but I think our first 10 customers were fairly hard fought, as I think they are in probably just about any SaaS that's doing kind of mid-market sales.
Excellent. All right, so tell me a bit about the Prismatic product, what exactly it provides to its users, and is it similar to a Zapier, or is it completely different to that?
Yeah, super good question. So the first thing to kind of talk about or explain is that integration platforms and iPaaS, as they're called, integration platform as a service, because everything is as a service now. So integration platforms are too, apparently, but integration platform as a service has existed for a very long time, or integration platforms of some form or fashion, all the way back to the 70s and probably even before. And we've seen various generations of them. And of course, today we have cloud integration platforms, but kind of throughout that history, they have been almost exclusively focused on the problem of, hey, I'm a business that needs to integrate together the things that I use internally, such that I can essentially save work for my people, for my employees, and make things more efficient and all those things. All of that is great. All of that is necessary. And that is a mature market that is not going anywhere. And there are some companies in that space that are very, very good at what they do. And I think Zapier is one of those companies. Yeah. Zapier is kind of on the little bit more consumer or professional side. On the other end of the spectrum, you have companies like MuleSoft or Boomi that are on the more enterprisey side.
I see, yeah.
Prismatic is similar in that we are also an integration platform, and we transform data and we ship data and we talk to APIs and all of those things.
Yeah.
But it differs in a pretty significant way. And that is that Prismatic is focused specifically on the use case where we are helping software companies who aren't integrating their own things together. They're not integrating the internal tools they use. They are connecting their product to the other products that their customers use.
Oh, I see.
And so you kind of have this additional complexity around the idea that I'm not just hooking system A to system B. I'm hooking system A to system B for 225 different customers of mine, or whatever the case is. And so you end up with this kind, a few complexities around that. Of course, every one of your customers has their own authentication to system B. Every one of your own customers might be on a slightly different version of system B in some use cases. And so we handle that kind of extra layer of complexity that SaaS runs into when you are doing this as an embedded part of your product for your customer.
Okay, makes sense. All right, so just curious, how are you using email marketing to convert trials to customers and retain existing customers?
Sure, yeah. So email marketing is obviously a big part of, I think, probably just about any SaaS. We've had a fair amount of success with it. We have a free trial on our website. We also have various other mechanisms by which people reach out and contact us. And so we use that kind of inbound interest to then reach out to folks, find out, what their use cases are, whether they're a good fit. And we do a lot of discovery calls with with folks that come in through that inbound interest. And so, I think making a decision around an embedded integration platform like ours is a very big decision for a company. You're making a bet that that's the thing you want to build a part of your product on. And so it's usually a pretty, I guess, consultative and back and forth process to help customers make sure they understand what we are, what we aren't. And I think most of that kicks off with an email of some form or fashion, and then often turns into, a more elaborate dialogue or, sometimes pretty long proofs of concept and that kind of thing.
Okay. And other than email, what would be your most successful customer acquisition channels?
Yeah, I think, inbound has absolutely been our most successful. And I think, that just comes from a long period of building organic interest in the product and the category and everything else. So, I think inbound has been, the most productive. I think, email marketing from an outbound perspective is second, and paid search probably, down from that.
Bit of paid search. Okay. And then what are your thoughts on balancing inbound and outbound marketing for best results? You've sort of mentioned you prefer the inbound. Have you had much success with outbound? Have you tried it?
Yeah, I think, outbound is kind of in an interesting point right now where we're all getting so many emails, especially in the last, 6 months even. I think it's ticked up where, I think it's a constant cycle to make sure that your email outbound continues to be effective. So we've certainly had some success with that. I think it's a constant battle of tweaking it and just continuing to, to make it productive. Inbound is definitely the more sustainable and more scalable, I think in some ways for us, at least at this point. But, outbound will continue to be an important part of it. And I think will be a changing landscape month after month for years to come.
So you do have an SDR team, do you?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no worries. All right. So what advice would you have to reduce churn and retain paying customers?
I think from our perspective, just make sure that we keep adding the right amount of value for our customers. I think, we're still a small enough and early enough stage company that we can really have a bead on our customer base and what they need and where they get value out of the platform and continue to improve the product. I think the product is a super, super important part. I mean, this is an obvious statement, but I think the product is a super, super important part of that. And so, at Prismatic, we put a huge amount of emphasis on the product and making sure that the product is actually the right thing to add real value for our customers. I think if you do that, a lot of the rest takes care of itself. Now, of course, you have to be responsive to customers. You have to have good customer service. Your offering has to continue to make sense from an economics perspective, but it's all led by the product. And so we've put a huge amount of investment into the product over the last years that continues to improve and ramp up. And I think that's our number one mechanism to make sure that people who are on the platform continue to see value and therefore continue to stay.
Yeah, and the feedback that you get from customer success would be useful too, obviously.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, that's from our perspective, at least our best view into the market are the customers that are using the product day in and day out and have bet their product's direction on our platform. And there's no better skin in the game than that. And we've had some very, very successful partnerships with those customers that are great for us and great for them.
Nice. Okay. So at the moment, what would be your single biggest challenge that you're experiencing with growing Prismatic?
I think with any SaaS like Prismatic, once you start to kind of round the inflection point, you're growing about as fast as you can. And I think that has, just all kinds of challenges around making sure that you're making the right decisions for the customer base, making sure that you're scaling the team in the right way and the product in the right way and the infrastructure in the right way. So I think just growth is probably the number one answer to what you said is, just making sure that we stay in front of the growth. Now that plays itself out in a lot of different ways. In our case, it means making sure that the platform stays ahead from a technology standpoint, from an infrastructure standpoint. It also means that we stay ahead from from just a growing sales standpoint, growing the sales team and make sure that we continue to evolve that at the right pace.
Yeah.
But those are very good problems to have.
Oh, yes.
It's just, it's the kind of thing that you start to have to spend a lot of time on, kind of once you reach that area of product market fit.
Nice. Okay. What would be your favorite business book?
Oh, that's a good question.
That's my favorite question.
Yeah. So there are a lot of really good books out there, that I'm sure many others have mentioned. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna list one that this is obscure, but it's one called No Man's Land by a guy named Doug Tatum. And
okay.
I read this book years and years and years ago. It's certainly not one you see, bandied about anymore. He was a one-hit wonder, as far as I know, wrote one book, but the book is about the idea that, there is this chasm between being a small business and a growing mid-sized business. And I think in startup land, we all kind of, act like that's not a thing and we're just going to rocket through it. And, there's kind of a mentality there. But I think the reality is many businesses at some point, maybe not so much venture-backed startups, but especially bootstrapped or non-venture-backed startups, have to make a decision as to whether they're going to be small or grow past that. And there's a really awkward stage that this author talks about as being too big to be small and too small to be big. And you basically can't live there. And so, either you're going to get there and then, the wheels are going to come off the bus and you're going to become a small company again, or you're going to somehow fight through it and become a mid-sized business. And, way back in, I don't know, 2012, 2013, 2014, when I first read this book, it was very visceral to me as as kind of the challenges that we were having at my previous company, growing through that kind of awkward 40 or 60 or whatever person size. And once you get to the other side, then you have some scale on your side. But if you don't get past it, you're in a really awkward place. And that book really, really struck me, I guess, because I was just living it so viscerally. And I think it's very well written and very well kind of laid out.
Okay.
And honestly, I respect the fact that the guy had one thing to say. He wrote a book, he said it, and then he went back to whatever else he was doing. And I kind of think he wrote a book that said what he wanted to say, and that was that. So that's a deep cut. That's an obscure one, but I would urge anybody in kind of a small to mid-sized business to read it. It's a fast read, and there are certainly some interesting concepts.
Excellent. Yeah, that's one I've never heard of, but I'll check it out for sure. Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. So what would you say you're curious about or researching right now regarding SaaS or just software in general?
I mean, I think the rate at which top of the funnel sales evolves is so rapid that you have to just constantly be learning in that world.
Yeah.
And we talked about how outbound email marketing doesn't work like it did 2 years ago. And it certainly doesn't work like it did 5 years ago.
Yes.
Probably even 2 months ago, if we're honest. And all of the things around that. I mean, there are some companies that are starting to really put more time and energy into actual phone cold calling again. That was very out of favor for a while. It seems like it's back in some ways. There are just so many different ways to do those things, and it's so important to top of the funnel lead generation that I think that's very much on our mind at Prismatic as we scale. It's very much on my mind, and I guess as far as one particular topic in the SaaS land, I think that's the one that I'm paying some attention to now.
Nice. Okay. All right. So where can people go to find out more about Prismatic?
I mean, our website is by far the best resource, prismatic.io. You can also, that links to a lot of resources. We have a lot of, a lot of content kind of around the category in general and also around our solution specifically. You can also, of course, reach out to us, reach out to me. We'd love to talk more. We obviously at this point have talked to a lot of SaaS companies about integration needs and challenges. And if nothing else, we'll probably have somewhere to point you, even if we're not the right solution.
Perfect. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Michael. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks a lot, Scott. I appreciate it, and have a great day.
You too. Take care.